If you're moving to Newberg from out of state, or maybe you just moved here and you haven't been here long, there's some things that you need to know about what winters are like in Oregon and specifically in Newberg. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing about some things that you really need to know, just kind of some facts, some stats, and really just give you an idea of what winter is like here in Newberg. And then I'm also going to give you some tips about how to actually get through the winter and potentially even enjoy it. By the way, if this is your first time here and you want to know all about what it's like to live in Newberg, go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel and you'll get all those kinds of videos similar to this, and also events, local things happening, things like that. Also, sometimes we even do things about real estate, what the real estate market's doing and things like that. Because we are a small real estate team, we specialize in helping people relocate. Our information is at the bottom of the screen if that's something you're interested in. All right, so moving on to what are some things to know about Newberg winters? Well, the first thing is that you have to be prepared that winter is going to last really from like November until March. There are sprinkled sunny days in between, but you kind of have to be mentally prepared that the weather just isn't going to be the greatest, depending on your perspective, from November to March. All right, let's look at some more specifics. So this graph is showing what the average low temperatures are for all the days of the year. Now, December is typically the coldest day, and remember, these are low temperatures, so not every day is going to be at 34 degrees. But typically, there's going to be several months where the temperatures are below 40, and that's again November through March. Now, these temperatures may not seem that bad on their own, but it's not the temperatures themselves that get you. It's that Oregon has a wet cold, is what we call it. So even though the temperatures may be in the high 30s and 40s, because of the wetness and the rain, it just feels really cold and it chills you to your bone. There's actually many days where it's below freezing that it doesn't feel as cold as the days where it's wet and that 38 degrees and rain, which is kind of like my least favorite weather. But the good months make up for it in my mind. Speaking of freezing days, it actually doesn't freeze that much in Newberg. Newberg typically has about 40 days that are below freezing on average. But the nice thing about Newberg is that the days that it's freezing are typically the days where it's dry. Now, I personally like snow, and we'll get to snow in just a minute, but typically when it's freezing, it's going to be a clear day. It's not going to be overcast, because really it's the clouds being gone that lets all of the warmth kind of escape. And that's what makes it cold. So you're not going to get a whole lot of freezing days where there's ice on the roads. It's actually fairly uncommon to have ice on the roads here in Newberg, which is great for people who really don't like driving in snow or ice. All right, so getting to rain. Yes, it rains a lot here. It rains on average about 144 days out of the year, which is compared to 106 days for the rest of the country. So on this graph from Best Places, you can see how much rain there typically is per month. Again, November through March are the rainiest months, and you still get rain in April and May, but it's not as much. So those months are a lot more manageable. There's a lot more sunny days in those months. All right, now getting to snow, because of course, when you talk about winter, you have to talk about snow. Well, Newberg doesn't get very much snow at all. Again, you can see on this graph that most months you don't even get an inch of snow. And now it says on average December gets about an inch of snow, but there's a lot of Decembers where it doesn't snow at all. The reason that's an average is because when it snows and you get a few feet, well, that becomes the average for that month. Most years there's only like 1 or 2 actual snows, and by actual snows I mean where there's like, you know, substantial snow. You can make snowmen and you can have snowball fights, you can sled. But a lot of times there's like hardly even a dusting. I personally really like snow. I grew up with snow. I don't mind driving in snow, so I like when it snows. Newberg is a rain town. When it snows everywhere else around, typically Newberg is 34 degrees and rainy, which I personally don't like. Some people really appreciate that, but I would much rather, if it's cold and wet, for it to just be a couple degrees lower and be snowing, because snow is beautiful and rain and mud, in my opinion, just not. Okay, now the next thing to know is that in Newberg, and really anywhere in Oregon, this is probably something you should be aware of, is that it gets dark around 4:30. Now, depending on where you're coming from and what time zone you're in and where along the time zone you are, you may not realize that when it's winter and when it's cloudy, it gets dark at like 4:30. So really from like late November until February, you just have to be prepared that it's going to be dark, which is hard for people who are commuting a lot and they're driving to and from work in the dark. I get that that is really hard. Next thing to be aware of is what I call the February fake out. Now, the February fake out is every year, typically in February, maybe in March, maybe in January, there's going to be a stretch of time where it's warm, where it's sunny, and you think winter is over. Now, don't be fooled, because this happens almost every single year. My wife, who came from California, we went to George Fox, and she thought once that sunny stretch hit that all of a sudden winter was over, and she really had a hard time once that next rainy spell hit. So as tempting as it may be to get excited, just know that spring really isn't going to come until at least probably April or maybe even May, where you get that normal like spring, sunny 70-degree weather. All right, the next thing to be aware of, that's not really a big deal, but most Oregonians don't really use umbrellas very often. Now, it's not in every case, but most of the time, unless there's an absolute downpour, Oregonians are just used to the rain. They don't want to lug an umbrella everywhere. They just kind of get used to it. Part of that's because of the wind. Like if you have an umbrella and it's windy out, your umbrella is going to get turned inside out or blow away. And the other thing is then you have to carry it inside and all of that. But the other reason is just because Oregonians are used to bad weather, and so they buy good gear. Now, speaking of good gear, this next section, I'm going to talk about ways that you can actually enjoy winter and some things to help keep your mind off of the dark and the cold and the wet. All right, so you know what to expect for winter in Newberg, but how do you actually enjoy the winter? Or maybe if you're not going to enjoy it, how would you at least get through it so that it's better than it otherwise would be? Well, the first tip I have is don't dread winter before it comes. I've gotten caught many times dreading winter, sometimes even once summer happens, the days start getting shorter, I'm already dreading the bad weather. And one time this hit me, I was walking through really a beautiful path, a lot like this one. And I was like, oh my gosh, like winter's coming, fall's coming, and weather's gonna be bad. And I was like already like feeling depressed. And then I stopped and looked around, and it was a 70-degree, sunny, beautiful, perfect weather day. There were beautiful leaves all around me that were changing color. And I realized, what am I doing? I'm missing out on one of the best days of the year because I'm already dreading what's going to come. So there's enough sunny days and nice weather throughout the fall and spring that, like, as much as it can feel hard that winter is coming, my best advice is don't dread it before it comes. My next tip is to get outside. Right now it's November and it's 60 degrees. The weather feels pretty nice. It's not rainy. And so get outside whenever you can. There's a ton of research that shows the benefits of getting outside, enjoying the weather. And a lot of people just don't go outside much from November till like April. So my best advice is when there are nice days, get outside, enjoy the moments, and get in nature as much as you can, because there's a ton of great nature places in Newberg. All right, the next way to enjoy the winters is to buy the right gear. Honestly, the hard thing about winters is getting wet and cold. So if you have good gear, which is warm clothes, layer up. So when it's cold, I typically wear a shirt under my dress shirt. I wear a dress shirt. I wear a sweater, and then I wear a coat. And then I wear thermals underneath my pants because I don't want my legs to get cold. When it's raining, having a coat that is waterproof, wearing boots that are waterproof, and also having rain pants because rain gets on your pants and soaks through your legs. If you have all the right gear, it's actually not that bad. You can go out in almost any weather and stay warm and dry and still get outside and enjoy being outside. Oh yeah, and another thing is gloves. I found whenever it's below 45 degrees and raining, my hands get super cold. And that's partially because my hands are just always cold, but also I've just realized whenever it's below 45 and raining, I'm automatically wearing gloves because otherwise my hands get cold and it sucks. If money is an issue, there's typically places on Facebook Marketplace or thrift shops where you can get gear for cheap. So whatever you do, I'd find a way to get gear that is warm and that is going to keep your whole body dry. All right, the next thing is during the winter, take the time to make intentional plans with friends or family. So rather than all the busyness of summer, take time to actually like schedule out meeting a friend for coffee or going with your family to a coffee shop or somewhere nice and warm and like spending intentional time together with the people that you really care about. It's kind of a way to really live in the cycle of life and kind of change your pace a little bit, be a little bit more intentional, and focus on those close relationships that are important to you. One thing that I love is really savoring like a cup of hot chocolate or a cup of hot cider and really doing some intentional things that you're only going to do in the winter, and that makes these times a little bit more special. The next thing is travel. So go to the coast, spend some time over there. If you can afford it, go on a vacation where it's nice. February is usually a good time to go, like when you've had enough of winter and you want to go somewhere warm. Also going to the mountain. Mount Hood has a lot of great places where you can stay and really enjoy winter rather than just that's cold and wet. You can actually enjoy like a true winter with lots of snow, go sledding if you enjoy that, skiing. So take time to actually do intentional traveling. So that's going to make winter a lot more bearable and potentially even a special time that you look forward to. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you. If you are relocating to the area and you have more questions, feel free to let me know. Again, my contact information is at the bottom of the screen. If you're looking to buy a home, we do have really good buyer guides that you can go through. So if that's you, you can check those out. Also, YouTube is going to be suggesting a couple videos that it thinks you might be interested in. So go ahead and check out one of those videos, and I'll catch you in the next one.